Hey everybody, this is Lauren Stein over here at Acctivate, and today we're going to cover all the new features in version 10.3. We're going to change it up a little bit. This is going to be just a strict demo, it's not going to be any slides. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Before we get into Acctivate as the app, we're going to cover the new installation and update files. So currently our help site breaks out the QuickBooks versions based on your locale. It lists US, Canada, UK, and Australia as separate downloads. So if we pull up the help site here, we can see this. So you've got QuickBooks US, QuickBooks Canada, QuickBooks UK, QuickBooks Australia. So in version 10.3, we have combined all of those versions into one just single QuickBooks version for Acctivate. Alternatively, you'll still see the CIMA and Intact builds broken out as separate files because those are completely different accounting softwares. But for QuickBooks users, it will now just be the one installation file. Okay, and then let's get into Acctivate. And we'll take a look at Configuration Manager because we've got some new options there, and we'll take a look at configuration before we get into the actual bulk of the enhancements. So to start off, there are a few more options available for customers utilizing EDI, bin locations, and some additional user permissions. So if we go into Configuration Management and User Information, I'm logged in as the sys user. We have a new customer user permission specifically for ship-to addresses. Previously, the user needed to maintain account information access to modify the ship-to location list. Now the permission has been split out to separate the two permissions, so you can have users with account information access to modify the main customer information like billing address, etc., and other users with access just to the ship-to address modifications. So if we set this maintain ship to addresses to no, on the ship to tab of the customer window, the add and delete buttons will be grayed out for that specific user. Alright, and in the sales order section of configuration, in the order options, this warn if duplicate customer PO number is entered will now warn you in the EDI utility. So that way, if you've imported a purchase order from your EDI trading partner, and then let's say they send you maybe a change on an 850, so they send you a new 850, it will have the same PO number as the original PO number. So now with this option checked, you'll be able to say like, okay, we've got this duplicate customer PO number. It's probably because they resent this PO. We need to open that original sales order, cancel it, and then bring in this new 850 so we can process the change. On the same note, the EDI utility will now warn when the item listed on the PO is inactive in Acctivate. So this gives you the opportunity to research why your trading partner is ordering inactive items. So maybe you would want to still import it as is, but substitute it out on the order for an active item, or use this notification so you can talk to your trading partner to update their product ID and resend that 850 with an active item. Of course, if you substitute that item out, just keep in mind for EDI purposes, if you're sending 856 and 810 documents back to that trading partner, they might fail if a different product ID is used. So you might want to just go ahead and contact the trading partner and then have them order something that's active. If you want to go ahead and just import it in as an inactive item and send them whatever remaining stock you have, let's say you marked it as inactive because you don't want to order anymore, but you still have some in stock, then you would just bring it in. It's just a warning. It's not going to block you from bringing in that 850. And then we'll take a look at what those warnings look like here in a minute once we get out of Configuration Manager. So I'm going to save with that option checked just so you can see how it works in a little bit. And then for those of you utilizing bin locations, we've added an inventory option to require locations on all transactions. So that's in the inventory section, inventory options. And when we hit edit in this inventory options box, now we have this require locations on all transactions. So with this checked, any transaction that you post, whether that's a receipt, assembly, transfer, sale, any of those transactions, they're going to require a bin location. So if you want to check this option in Configuration Manager, and let's say you have products listed in blank locations, the inventory transfer window will allow you to transfer out of a blank location into an existing location or create a new location on the transfer session. Also, an import can be set up to transfer any item listed in a blank location into an existing location, and then you can specify a primary location, whether that's manually on each product or through an import to move anything out of a blank location into an existing location. Because again, you're not going to be able to sell out of a blank location or receive into a blank location from that point forward. Okay, another major improvement is the ability to send and receive FTP EDI transactions directly from Acctivate to your service provider. So for those customers utilizing SPS Commerce or any other service provider that requires FTP upload and download, you'll no longer have to run a command prompt to move the files from apps like WinSCP to a local directory. So let's take a look at EDI, trading partners. We're going to take a look at system. Now, system is the default trading partner. Everybody's going to have a system because this is where you can set the default incoming and outgoing paths as well as the FTP information. So in system, now you see these FTP options. So in edit mode, you'll enter the FTP service provider. So if you're using SPS, just typing in SPS will auto-populate the remaining portion of the service provider as well as the server in and server out locations. And then you'll enter in your user ID and password for the FTP upload download. Now, if you are going to be using FTP, make sure to check the FTP enabled box on the system user. If for some reason you're utilizing multiple service providers where some transactions go through local directories and other through FTP, you have to have FTP enabled at the system level, or any transaction that's using FTP won't go to those FTP folders. This is kind of a on-off switch for FTP capabilities. So again, just make sure to check this at the system level. And then anytime you create a new partner that is FTP enabled, you would just check that box, make sure that everything on the advanced options is correct, which it should be, or it will be because it's from system. And then you can go ahead and add the specific transactions as normal. So if we take a look at the Bristol trading partner, it's actually going to local folders, and the Wayfair partner is going to FTP. But on here, on the example, you'll see it's going to local folders. The reason it's still going to show your local folders is because, you know, yes, we are doing the FTP upload download, but what we do is we download those into the local folders to process and activate. And then when you send those transactions back to the FTP site, exports those out to the local directories and then runs a script to send those back to the FTP directory. So that way you have a backup of all the transactions that you're bringing in and sending back out to your trading partners in your local directories rather than having to rely on the FTP site to have all that historical transactions saved. And also, as a side note for the ASN transactions, we're now including the carrier service in the shipment row for those of you who require this. So any of you that are needing to send ASNs to your trading partners, make sure to go ahead and update if this is one of the requirements of theirs and you've been waiting on this. We should be releasing a previews of this build shortly, and then eventually the final release to the entire customer base. Okay, we're just going to keep going in Configuration Manager. One of the new options is in mobile receipts. You'll now have the option to receive in the purchasing unit rather than the stocking unit. And we've also, of course, you're not going to see this on screen, but for barcodes, we've added support for scanning the quantity application identifier and also the net weight for lot serial numbers. So for those of you who need this, or maybe are creating barcodes or already have barcodes that have this information in it, the application identifier is 30 for quantity and 310 or 320Y, depending on if you're using the weight of kilograms versus pounds. So if you're using kilograms, make sure to use 310Y and 320Y if you're using pounds. Okay, and then that's all we have for configuration management. So let's go ahead and take a look at EDI. So that's EDI, process EDI, and as you can see here, when it pulls up, it looks in the local directories for Bristol, and then it looks in the FTP site for SPS Commerce for this Wayfair trading partner. Now we do have 2 warnings on Bristol, and that's because there's a sales order already entered with the same PO number. So this is where it gives you, the prompt to say, okay, well, they sent us a change on the 850, so maybe we need to cancel this original A1523 order and then import this in as a new 850 transaction for that trading partner. And I've also got a product TR10 on line 3 that is inactive. And there are no errors on the purchase order for Wayfair or warnings. Okay, we do have a full webinar on the entire EDI utility, so I'm not going to process these, but if I did, it would process them just as they normally would, and then once you're exporting for, if your partner uses the FTP site, it will export those to the FTP site. Alright, so on the product window, we have added the ability to create and import multiple alternate product IDs, which could be used as the alternate product ID on the product window, UPC, or web store product IDs. So for those of you that have multiple UPCs or alternate IDs for one product, you'll now be able to specify that on the alternate ID tab of the product window. And also the alternates can be used by the users creating sales or purchase orders and selecting the items. So you could type in A121CS and tab out of the product ID field on a sales order, and it will pull in the A121 product from your database. So if we click edit, you'll also see a primary checkbox. So let's say you've got 2 alternate product IDs, and one of them you want to show on the actual main product ID or the product window. So toggling this primary will actually change the alternate ID and alternate description if you specify one related to this ID on the main product window. And for those of you using web stores, you can now set up the IDs on each product manually or via import and specify the specific template. So we could say, some alphanumeric ID. Maybe they don't have a separate description, but in the type, we have web store. And I've actually got multiple web store templates set up. I'm not going to demo the web store process itself. I've just got the default template set up so you can see the options here. So what you would do is you would say, okay, so on Amazon, this is one of our product IDs, this A123456. And on Magento, it's B589743 or something. And then you do web store Magento. And so this way, if the product ID on the Amazon template is coming in as this, it will match it up to your internal Acctivate product ID. And this is a great addition to Acctivate for those of you using like eBay and Amazon, because those stores actually create their own IDs for each item. So this gives you the ability to maintain that in Acctivate easily without having to do conversions for the product ID on each web store. So to add this, if you're updating to 10.3 and you want to add a whole bunch of these, we do have a new import template for this. So File, Import Data, and then you'll see Product Alternate IDs in the Inventory section, and we'll create mapping. And on the columns, you'll see the required fields of product ID, so that's your internal Acctivate ID, the alternate that you're creating, the type of the ID, so that's either an alternate product ID, a UPC, or web store. And then if you're creating this for a web store template, you'll need to also specify the specific template ID for that web store. The rest of these are optional fields, but I definitely recommend always mapping type, and then again, web store if you have multiple, the template ID itself. And then a side note for Magento web stores, we've added the ability whenever you're processing orders from Magento to update the order status in Magento to be processing after downloading the orders into Acctivate, and complete once you've invoiced those same orders in Acctivate. So the next time you run a sync after it's invoiced, it will update the status of the Magento order to complete. So this should save you quite a bit of time in processing Magento orders, because I know a lot of y'all were having to manually kind of process those statuses still on your own in the web store. So now Activate's template will do that for you. All right, so let's get into some of what we feel are the really major updates on top of the alternate IDs, and that's the ability to process assemblies from other windows. So we'll start by opening a sales order that I've already created. 524T. So the first two rows that we've got here are for assembly items, and before we get into creating assemblies from the sales order, I'm going to show you how that alternate ID field works. So what you would do is, if your users are more familiar with your alternate IDs than they are with your normal product IDs, they can type those in to select those. So it would be A121CS was one of the alternates. And when we hit tab, it selects the product A121. Okay, and then as you can see here, we don't have enough of these assembly items in stock to process this order. So let's create the assembly sessions. So we'll hit save. And to create assembly sessions from the sales order, we have a create menu up here on the top next to view customer. Click that and then do assembly session. So what this is going to do is it's going to create one session for this specific sales order that's actually linked to the sales order based on the back ordered quantity. Now everything that was ordered for those two assemblies was back ordered, so I'll show you the difference and how that works from another window whenever you have a mix of scheduled and back ordered quantities on the sales order. Okay, and then just to show you here, since we did have two assembly sessions or two assembly items on the sales order, in the transaction dropdown, you'll now see the product ID listed. That is another enhancement that we've added in 10.3 to give you more visibility on what those transactions include. We're going to stay here for a minute. So another function that's added specifically to this window is the ability to split out the lot serial numbers. So let's say on line 1, the lot number that we have in stock doesn't have enough to fulfill the total quantity of 2,000 pounds. So when we select this for 1,000, we have this new window that pops up that says, this lot number has insufficient quantity for this assembly. Do you want to add another lot for this product in the assembly session? If you hit yes, it will select that lot number as well as add what's remaining in the quantity to that line. So we'll go ahead and select the next lot number because we still haven't fulfilled the full 2,000. Yes. And then the third. We're actually going to use all of the lot numbers for that specific Colombian bean product. And we'll give this final good a lot number, because when you have a lot numbered assembly session, it will actually select the lot number you created when you post it if it's related to a specific order. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and post. And then on the report, you'll see the variance because we had to break out the original lot number into 3 different lines. So you'll see the variances for those. And also our Acctivate report preview has changed because we've updated the version of the Crystal Reports viewer that we're using. Now we've got print report, export report, email report, which that's a pretty cool function. You can actually email this report to an internal user, or you can email a report and link it to a specific document like a business activity or a sales order or a product or something. And then you can also open it in a specific application and toggle the report tree. The refresh icon has been updated. It looks a lot cleaner than it used to, that's for sure. Okay, so now if we go back to the sales order, you can see that those lines have been scheduled. So now both lines are scheduled. And the one that had lot numbers, if we click on the lot numbers button, the lot number and quantity are both selected because that assembly session was linked to this specific order. So when you post it, it assigns the lot number you created on that finished good to the sales order itself. So for those of you that are, creating these assemblies based on the sales orders, your users aren't going to be required to select each lot after it's been posted if it's linked to a specific sales order. All right, and then another function that's been added to the sales order window is you see this customer is over their limit. Now you can not only approve credit, but you can also remove that approval. So if we click Edit and click on the Customer tab, Approve Credit, it will pull in the order hold status. If you are currently logged in as a user that has access to do this, you won't be prompted for your password. If you don't have access to it, you'll have to have somebody walk over, select their username, and enter a password. That's not new to 10.3, but I thought it'd be good to talk about. Hit Release. And then after it's been released, you see that, it's approved by this user on this date, and now you also have the ability to remove that approval. So for those of you that release the credit, do a partial invoice, and then you want to put that sales order back on hold, you can now. So you would just remove the approval after you create that invoice. We're going to keep it approved because I also want to show you this new feature on the Create Invoice window. So now we're ready to ship this order. Let's hit Create Invoice, and you'll see this new button called Credits, and the balance over here is in red. So what you do is when you click Credits, Acctivate will check to see if there's any unapplied credits or payments for that specific customer from the sync with QuickBooks. And you can actually apply those credits or payments to the specific order. Now I do have enough to cover the whole balance, but I'm just going to do the $200 check because let's say this is a deposit for the specific order. And then you'll see the balance due is $40.86. We're going to keep that credit because the customer is kind of deciding on whether or not they want a refund for that or what they want to do with it. And so we're going to go ahead and apply just the payment of $200. And now you can see on the right hand side the credit applied of $200 and the remaining balance of $40.86. And let's say the customer, yes, we're applying a credit, but there's still a balance, so they want to go ahead and pay for it. So when you select a payment type, the amount is going to default to what's remaining after the credits and payments have been applied. So for those of you that have been using the customer deposits process, so you can apply payments to some of these orders or invoices, this will be a way for you to, process those payments in QuickBooks. And then once you release the order, let's say there's really just like a couple hours in between, but you wanted to go ahead and get those payments into QuickBooks, you can process them in QuickBooks, run a sync, and then when that person goes to invoice the order, they can apply those credits or payments to the order as needed. And then when you invoice it, it's going to apply the credit via the sync. Also on the customer balance, it's going to apply that credit there as well. And then it'll also create this cash payment of $40.86 in QuickBooks to be reconciled out of your undeposited funds account, just like any normal payment created from this window. All right, so the last two things that I'm going to cover before we open this up for questions are both specific to assemblies but in different windows. So the first one I'm going to cover is in Order Manager. You can now create assemblies from Order Manager via the Actions menu. So if I open up Order Manager, and let's say I want to check we'll do scheduled orders. I want to check all scheduled orders because I want to go ahead and create assembly sessions for anything that is required to fulfill one of these sales orders. Do Action and Create Assemblies. And it'll say create assembly sessions for 26 orders. These are all the orders I have selected. It's just a confirmation on do you want us to verify and create sessions for any possible assembly listed on a sales order. hit yes, and then you'll get another prompt telling you how many assembly sessions were created, as well as a list of sessions. So what it's going to do is it creates a session per sales order, but if that sales order has multiple assembly products listed on it, it will list a transaction per each product for that specific session related to the order. So we hit OK. We're going to close Order Manager and go to the assembly window. Now I know that the second assembly session created is related to an order that has multiple assembly items listed on it. So if we hit the transaction dropdown, you can see there are 4 different items selected on this session. And one of the new functionalities of the assembly window is to open up a sales order related to the assembly session. So if you click View Order, that opens up the sales order window. And this is where I was going to show you that it's only going to build the quantity that's back ordered. So we've got K10-L, the build quantity is 20. And you can see over here that K10-L is scheduled as 50 and the back order quantity is 20. So it's only going to have you build what's remaining to be shipped to that customer. And then also if I close this assembly window, you can click View Assemblies from the sales order to open the related assembly sessions. All right, and then we took this a little bit further for assemblies and we added an assembly tab on the Business Alerts utility. So if we go to Business Alerts, Assemblies, now you see there's this toggle here. You can see all assembly items in Acctivate. You can filter based on a specific warehouse, kind of like our reorder wizard, and then you can also toggle to see only items listed on sales orders. Now, I've already created sessions for items listed on sales orders via Order Manager, so if I utilize this just for those, it's not going to suggest anything, because you can see here on the right hand side that when you have a row selected, it gives you the product ID, the description, the warehouse that you've highlighted on the rows over to the left, and then based on the warehouse you see the suggested quantity, which is the suggested build quantity, what's on PO or unposted assemblies, what's on hand, what's reserved, the minimum stock quantities and maximum stock quantities, as well as the minimum order quantity. So I'm going to filter this on the Fort Worth warehouse only, and then I'm going to select all. And then you can see that when you select all, the build quantity will default to the suggested order quantity, or the suggested quantity base over here on the right hand side. And again, that's going to be based on, kind of like in the reorder manager, it'll be based on, you know, what's on hand, what's available, what's your minimum maximum stock quantities, all that good stuff. And if I click on this K10L, because I know it's listed on a sales order, you can actually see the sales orders it's listed on right here on the right hand side. So it's telling you which sales orders you need to build for. And on the top you can see View Item, Apply Suggested Quantities, Save the Selections, and then Create Assembly Session. And when you create an assembly session from the assembly utility in Business Alerts, it's going to create one session with multiple transactions based on what was suggested. So if you created one session with multiple transactions and you're building those or you're completing those at different rates, you would actually need to use the split transaction function to move it out or break it out into its own session to post it separately. Because when you post an inventory session with multiple transactions, it's actually going to post each transaction with the session all at one time. But transactions are really cool because on each transaction it can have its own product ID, warehouse, quantity. All right, so that's all the major updates in version 10.3. So give me one moment and I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to delete this session in case we need to run through this in the questions. And then I'm going to take a look at the questions that y'all have asked live. So give me just 1 second. Okay, so we do have a question on the FTP configuration. They're questioning the test upload and test download buttons because the FTP in has test upload beside it. So what happens when you're using FTP is they will be putting the files that you're importing into the download section. So that's the test out folder. And then when you send transactions back to your trading partner, it puts them in the in folder because you're uploading them into the FTP site. So that's why it does kind of look a little confusing, but if you think about it that way, the upload are going to be test in because they're going to be uploading it to your trading partners. Okay, so in the new report preview window, the select expert icon isn't shown. This new update in the Crystal Reports viewer actually doesn't have the option for a select expert. So if you find that you were using the select expert in the previous versions, what you should do is add selection prompts in configuration management to those actual reports so you can just use those filters in Acctivate before you're actually running the report rather than while you're in it, because that way, if you're doing it when you run the report, it's actually going to update, if there's summations in the report, it's actually going to update the summations. Because if you do select expert, the summations do not include those new filters that you've added. So again, if you need to add filters, that's done in the selection prompt section of Configuration Manager. And that is done in reports, report catalog. And let's go to inventory, warehouse, stock on hand. Let's say if you wanted to add a selection prompt, if you were using the select expert to filter on hand quantities below 0, you can just add that as a selection prompt and do that before you run it. And that'll be the product warehouse summary, quantity on hand. Okay, another question is, for serialized product, will this create the required transactions for each unit ordered? So let's say they've ordered 3 of the serialized product. Will it create all 3 transactions? Yes. For serialized items, it will be 1 session with a transaction for each serial number as the final good. I don't actually have a product that's an assembly that's serialized, so I can't show you that right now, but it does definitely work. I've set that up in my other demo on my local machine. So we've got another question on, can credits be applied during bulk releasing, so the prepare invoice window? The application of credits is only going to be on an order by order basis. It's not going to be on the prepare invoices window. So once an assembly transaction is created, where can we see a full list of what needs to be made per sales order or overall list for multiple orders? Once an assembly session is created, you can run the assembly transaction report, and you can actually add a selection prompt on that as well for posted versus unposted, and you can run it for unposted assembly sessions and only see what's remaining to be posted into stock. Okay, on the assemblies, how many characters do we now have available for lot numbers? So in 10.3, there was previously 25 characters, and now we've extended it to 40. And that will be, the full list of enhancements will be included on the help site this week. Obviously I didn't want to cover the full list of tickets that we included in 10.3, but that is one of the enhancements. Can you repost voided inventory sessions? No, you can't repost them. You would have to recreate them as a new session. Voiding it removes it from the system, as well as removes the journal entry through the sync. So does the FTP transfer allow for SFTP? So that's actually, SPS uses an SFTP URL, and that is in the system option that I was talking about. So actually it's on the trading partner. I can't show you the actual trading partner because for this test I had to use one of my customers that's in implementation still, and it shows their user ID information. But on their setup, it's FTP://SFTP. That works. If it's SFTP:// I haven't tested that specific yet. But for SPS, the sftp.spscommerce.net/testin does work. And do you have any capacity to rename the file when sending? Are you talking about like a file mask for that? Because you can set So let's say for your ASNs, you want it to have the transaction ID. If you double click in the mailbox file mask, these are your options, and it'll put in the information based on what you've selected. So you could do transaction ID, underscore, timestamp, or whatever you need, and then a specific file extension. And so every transaction sent for this specific trading partner for this specific transaction will have that information in the file name. Can payments be posted in Acctivate instead of QuickBooks? Posting of payments hasn't changed in Acctivate. There's not a separate payment entry system in Acctivate. It's still going to be from the invoice release window, just like it always has been. The update allows you to apply already posted payments from QuickBooks or credit memos from QuickBooks and the ones created in Acctivate to apply to an invoice that you're releasing. Do you have an error notification built in? I'm going to assume that's for EDI because you're the one that asked about the SFTP. So that's actually in the system. You'll have the logging level of exception information, warnings, errors, or exceptions. Okay, one of the things that I actually probably should have mentioned during the demo, but I can't show you in the demo, is that Authorize.net, we have increased the information we're sending to Authorize.net to include the invoice number, customer name, ship to, and billing information. It will be in the item details. So if you click on the transaction ID, that window will pop up and you'll see the invoice number, customer information, or the company name, shipping and billing information as well. And again, yes, creating payments outside of releasing invoices in Acctivate needs to be done in QuickBooks. The added functionality that we've had is any outstanding credit memos. That does include credit memos created in Acctivate, or outstanding payments can be applied on the invoice release window. But if you're creating a new payment, you would need to create that on the invoice order window. Our help site is help.acctivate.com. Acctivate spelled with 2 C's. Like I said, I've said this on every webinar, but we are constantly uploading content or adding content to the help site. Our support team has been diligently adding version 10.3 specific enhancement articles. I don't know if y'all have been seeing that. You can subscribe to when articles are posted, so you get notified in your email. You create support requests on our help site. This remote support is how you connect to our support reps once you schedule an appointment with them. And then our downloads are also downloaded from the help site. The procedure charts, if you hover over Learn Acctivate, procedure charts is one of the menus that drops down. Click on that and you'll see a full list of procedure charts for a lot of our core functionality. All right, guys, I hope you got a lot out of this webinar, and I hope you're just as excited as we are about these new functionalities in 10.3. And let us know if you'd like to get a preview build for 10.3 so we can go ahead and get you updated on it and eventually released to everybody. Hope you have a great day. Talk to y'all later.